Hello.
In your own time too.
But yeah, as I go through, feel free to kind of stop me and ask questions. Yeah, I think you guys have been stuck in there for a while, right? So I'm sure you're
Not stuck. We're enjoying it. We're enjoying it. It's good, isn't it, everybody?
We've fed him and everything.
Best position.
Completely spontaneous.
Okay. So if I get this right, so let me go through it, right? So very quickly about what it is. It's basically a mechanism to allow customers at the point they're spending to see how much they're spending in their home currency. Okay, so this could happen if they're buying something online or at the point of sale. But essentially, if you go to the US with your credit card from the UK, the US merchant is going to give you $1 price. And it's not until you actually get your card statement or you have a look at, your card account online, will you see how much you're going to be charged in sterling. Okay, so that lies at the basis of, why dual currency conversion exists. And we'll come to the commercial proposition, which essentially means there's something in it for everyone, except the schemes and the issuers who are currently doing the conversion. Okay, so if we look at what happens without DCC in place, you go along with your sterling card to a merchant that's selling in euros. That euro transaction, so you accept you're going to pay 100 euros, the euro transaction comes through to us, Trust Payments, the acquirer, gets processed through the scheme. The scheme and the issuing bank is where the conversion takes place. Okay, scheme rates through the issuer, and the merchant will get their euros. Okay, and euros get settled. The customer, of course, has to be charged in yourself. You'd be charged in sterling, but you'd see the euro conversion on your statement. Okay, so the important point here is where that conversion is happening, and where the conversion happens is where the FX revenue is generated. So we've built an integration with a company called Fexco. There are some others out there, but we have a long-standing relationship with Fexco to take that transaction as the customer goes through the checkout, and this works on point of sale as well. And so the customer is looking to pay the 100 euros, right? But it's really 90 sterling because they've got a sterling card. What we do is we get those rates from Fexco through the integration we have with them, and give the customer the choice of paying 90 sterling or paying the 100 euros. Okay, either way, at the end of the process, the merchant who's priced 100 euros, they'll receive 100 euros. Okay, but the customer at the point of checkout will have agreed to pay 90 sterling. So they know when they get their credit card statement at the end of the month, it will say 90 sterling. There's no uncertainty as to, how much sterling that 100 euros converted into. Okay, so to break that down a bit further and have a look at how that's different to the earlier without DCC. So again, the cardholder with a sterling card goes to buy something in euros. As they get to the checkout, we offer them the opportunity to pay the 100 euros or to pay an amount in sterling. Okay, so that sterling amount isn't predetermined. It's at the point they click checkout. We've got to get a rate in the background from Fexco and present the amount in sterling to the customer. Okay, so there's an important point there where the customer must have that choice of picking payment in euros or sterling. Okay, so assuming they want to pay in their own currency rather than the merchant's currency, we book the conversion at that point and then put it through as a sterling transaction. Okay, so the merchant will still get euros because of the fact we've done the conversion and we work that out with Fexco to settle euros to the merchant. But it's a sterling transaction that's gone through the card scheme into the issuing bank. Okay, pause there for a second to see if anyone's got a question on the flows so far. Okay, so all we've done is bring the conversion forward. A conversion has to happen because the customer's card is in a different currency to the merchant's sales process.
Also, I guess a good question, just a bit of interaction here, guys. Have all of you been at the airport or on holiday at some time or another, maybe in the duty-free section, where you guys have put your card in, you're expecting to pay 20 euros for your giant bars of Toblerone, which you're going to bring home for everyone, and actually it then pops up with the option to pay in sterling, and then you just have to pick GBP or euros. Have you all kind of seen that in the past?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is exactly what this is exactly what this is. So when you see our point of sale machines out there, and we're talking about DCC, our machines do support that. So whether they're a euro merchant or whether they're a GBP sterling merchant, we can support this. And I'm sure Seamus will talk about all the benefits of what kind of merchants this helps. But yeah, that's just a visual. That's what that is.
Yeah, and it's most common. I guess it started with the hotels, really. So slightly bigger ticket items where they were trying to get the conversions right. Now, why do it? Right. So this is probably the bit you're all waiting for. So as we said, right, it happens on the point of sale, or if the customer's buying something online. The bit on the right I'll come back to in a minute, right? That's what the customer's actually seeing. But the point is the revenue, right? FX conversions are hugely profitable because once you have the arrangement and the cost of every transaction to ourselves, trust is minimal. So our standard is to charge a margin of 3.5%. Okay, so if it's 100 euros, the customer will pay 103.5. As simple as that. And we calculate that in the background and put in the rate. And then we share that revenue with Fexco, who are our partners producing the rates, and with the merchant. So you'll have noticed up to now, there's no fee for the merchant. The merchant will pay their usual gateway fees, right, for the clicks. But essentially, the merchant gets 1% of that checkout value. Okay, and trusts get 1.15%. So there's a settlement process in the background to make sure the merchant gets their revenue for these transactions. Now, from the customer's perspective, they would have paid a fee to, the scheme and the issuer, right, for the conversion anyway. All we've done is bring that transparency up front, so, they can see exactly how much it's going to cost them in their home currency. Okay. Now, without going into the regulation, because there is a fee here and FX, for a number of reasons, itself is not regulated, but in the payments process, there is regulation requiring transparency. Okay, so if the revenue calculation is clear, this is what the customer will actually see. Right? So on the left there is that payment page, and just to make it a bit bigger, before they commit, there's a few things we have to show them. Some of it is driven by Visa and MasterCard and their rules, and some of it is driven by EU law and UK law for that matter. So there's a certain amount of text we have to put out there. If you think that text looks a bit dry and is not exactly selling it, I'm afraid we don't have much choice. There are some things we just have to display, which is essentially to make it very clear to the customer what kind of choice they're making. And within that disclosure, we have to tell them what the margin is. Okay, now EU currencies, the EU has a slightly different law where we've got to do a comparison against an ECB rate. But the ECB being the European Central Bank, right? But the screens look very much the same, very much like this. And we show them before what their choice is, they make their choice, and then we've got to replay it to them on the receipt, whether that's a receipt from a point of sale terminal or online. Okay, so the customer, quite clearly has made the choice and has been told more than once that they're selecting a conversion.
And Seamus, from your experience in the market, what is the typical range of FX margin as a charge? Would you say the typical range is 2 to 3% or 4 to 5? Are we bang in the middle? Or?
Yeah, so it varies, right? So normally we're dealing with major currencies. So 3.5 to 5% is quite normal. For some currencies, that can be a lot higher. Okay, currencies that aren't traded very much at all, right? But to be clear here, we are taking a Reuters wholesale rate and applying our margin on top of that. So that's all the revenue we're making. The Reuters input rate is where, the less traded currencies have some additional margin added. At a retail level, it's highly unlikely anyone will be able to achieve that Reuters rate.
Great. Okay. So for the purpose of the sales guys, we can comfortably say that the cost to the cardholder, they're not at any disadvantage by choosing to pay in their local currency, which would be a concern for a merchant potentially.
Yes, very, very much so, right? So they're not going to pay any more this way than they would do via the scheme of the issuer. Okay. And the problem is then, when you get deep into how FX rates are generated, but without going into that aspect, we're basing it on a rate essentially banks would use to do their own transactions. And we can do that because FEXCO operates in the FX markets and has access to those rates. Okay, so regulatory issues aside, you could argue that the customer is, no worse off The reality is they're better off because they can actually see it up front rather than waiting for the transaction to appear in their card statement or card account.
Seamus, just a question for me on this one, from a cardholder's perspective. So if I had chosen DCC, if I look at my statement, I would just see the one, I'd see the sterling transaction, on transaction. If I've chosen to do it in foreign currency, then am I going to see the transaction amount and then probably a charge as well?
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Issuing password with that.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. And thanks for clarifying that. That's what I thought it was.
Okay, and the receipt that we give them is effectively the equivalent of what they might see on the statement if they paid in the foreign currency.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's broadly what's in it for us, why the customer would choose to do it, and what's in it for the merchant. Onboarding itself is pretty simple, right? If it's a new merchant, especially a Tru SME new merchant, they literally just pick it on the merchant application form. There's a yes or no for DCC, just a drop down with simple yes or no DCC. If it's an existing merchant, you can put in a request for change, just say, please add DCC, and the operations team will take care of it. Okay, so for all of the Tru SME merchants, we will look to set them up on the standard pricing that we just saw. Right? That is the split, so it's 3.5% split, 1% to the merchant and 1.15% to trust. Now, for most retail merchants, DCC is a good thing, right? From what we've discussed so far, the merchant hasn't had to do anything. They literally just pick it and it becomes available at the point of sale once we know what currency the customer's card is in. But for some segments, so the money service businesses, the crypto merchants, doing conversions is their business, right? So typically they do not want it. Okay, so for all new merchants going through the merchant application form, it should default to yes. So DCC will be switched on for them. But those MCCs I've listed there, it will not default to yes unless they specifically want it. Okay, so most of our merchants, there's no reason why they wouldn't have it on, right? There's a chance that they don't see many tourists on their websites or coming into their shop, in which case it may not be triggered. But it doesn't cost them anything to have it there. Okay, the setup is done entirely by the operations teams. They need to do some things in OmniPay and then in Fexco systems to make the connection, but the merchant doesn't have to do anything at all. Okay, now there's a couple of points I need to make, right? One is it's available on our point of sale devices. Again, the merchant doesn't have to do anything, and it's available on our payment pages. But it's not available on the shopping carts. Okay, there's a long history to that, and it's a complex build, so it's not yet available on any of the shopping carts. Additionally, if a merchant is not using our payment pages, and I can go into this in more detail if we have time, if we want to do that. If a merchant is connecting to us via the API only method, which I guess is possible with Tru SME merchants, they have to build the integration, including the DCC API calls. Okay, so there is an additional integration to standard checkouts for DCC. And I think in the past, that's kind of been missed. They might have ticked it on the merchant application form, but then their implementation is, you know, they probably have a contractor who does the implementation of the API to our gateway, and the message doesn't get to their contractor that they need to build for DCC as well. So in reality, if they don't build it, it never gets triggered, right? So their payment pages will work, it's just the DCC will never get triggered. So it's just something to note when you're working with a merchant who's doing a direct integration. Final point I want to make there, because it's still in some of the collateral, hopefully it's in none of the collateral by the time it gets to you. Fexco offer a rate guarantee that if the customer finds a better rate anywhere else, they will reverse the transaction. Now, Fexco, we white label Fexco's service, right? So in the end, that transaction would have to come back to us and we'd have to go back through a process. We've never had to do it. Nobody has ever asked, but it's a complex process, and rather than keep putting up the rate guarantee that's never been invoked and risk having to go through that complex process, it's safer not to offer it. I don't think it makes any difference as to whether anyone, you know, accepts DCC, right? Because ultimately the customer chooses, and they're choosing on the basis of looking at the amount in their own currency as to whether they like it or not. Okay, so the two main points there are easy onboarding. You just have to tick yes or no. But don't forget to make the point to the API only merchants that they've got to have a look at that bit of the integration. It's all documented fully on the website, and it's not a difficult integration. They just have to remember to do it. Okay, so just a couple of recaps then at the end. What's in it for the merchant? I guess maybe it's obvious there's no FX exposure, right? Remember, the merchant selling 100 euros, they still receive 100 euros. Okay, even if the customer pays in sterling, and then they'll receive an additional 1% of that checkout. Okay, now given that the customer has explicitly accepted that conversion and they know how much they're paying in their home currency, there's much less reason, much less cause for the merchant, the customer, to request a chargeback. Okay, and this is all done within scheme rules. So apart from, you know, the wider laws and regulations of the EU and the UK, etc., we have to go through the scheme rules, and schemes make sure we're compliant before we can offer the DCC service. Okay, so in reality, the merchant doesn't have to do anything. It's just available. And the flip side for the cardholder is, you know, that transparency is worth a lot. Rather than them trying to figure out what it might be in their home currency, they know exactly what it is. And of course, we've added a few other talking points there, right, in terms of depending on, especially when it comes to things like hotels and paying for travel, they know exactly how much they need to put in their expenses rather than trying to figure out how much to convert from the foreign currency. Okay. But the key point, and it's in the regulation as well, but the key point is for the cardholder is we give them the choice, and give them the choice in a very transparent way. Okay. And of course, what's in it for us? Commission. You guys make all the money. All right, once it's set up, it just keeps rolling in, right? There's no more to do. why wouldn't you do it? So, anyone wouldn't offer DCC to their merchants?
Mental
What's
not.
We just need to be
the
the
shopping
acquirer.
carts? Oh, sorry, with the shopping carts not available on the shop. What's that knocking out from us now? Of potential that we could go for?
Yeah,
Quite a lot, guys. Do you reckon?
I'd say 90% of our applications all use shopping carts. Yeah,
90.
that's it. 90, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much all of them are online. What about that new store product though? If we're the ones creating the.
Yeah. But I suspect we'll be able to have DCC on store, Seamus.
I don't see why not, right? We have to pay for the development.
Yeah, no, I'm not thinking about that, but generally that's something that, you're right.
So, absolutely agree, right? We would want it on the shopping carts. When we did have a shopping cart manager, product manager, he said his experience with our competition is they all found the integration far too difficult.
Do the shopping carts have to do the integration into Vexco?
Yes. So
it's integration of them into, okay.
So yeah, we've actually got an integration into OmniPay, and that's got to be coordinated into the gateway, right? So the rates flow all the way through.
So from POS, we're definitely look. POS is not. It's already there. That's a given. Yeah. Just thinking the e-com is going to be.
Yeah, and apart from London School of Economics, most of the sales we currently do in Germany, Ireland, Malta, and the UK are all on POS devices.
And that's the point, Paul, when we do the switcher campaigns and additional services we can push if we get on the acquiring.
Yeah, I'm just with Seamus, when we have our monthly chats, and we need to ask what these shopping carts must be going into. We're not the only ones asking for them to go into Vexco. Those shopping carts must be going. Vexco must realise they're losing out massively, and they must come up with something. Should we bring it up on the call? Ask the question.
If they've integrated to other shopping carts.
Or the other way around, whatever it is.
It's not a direct integration between the shopping cart and Vexco, right?
Right.
It's more internally to us, and I think that's where the shopping carts struggle. I don't think they struggle. It's just quite a lot for them to build. All right.
Okay. We'll take offline because.
But you're right. We should pursue it, right? And to Muriel's point, maybe we should start by pursuing it with store.
Yes, 100%.
We should raise that with Vexco.
Yeah.
We'll take that one away. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's a bit more detail in the back of that deck on the API integration. Should any of your merchants not use our payment pages? Right?
Okay. Any more for anyone? No, wonderful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Big D. See you tomorrow.
All right. See you tomorrow. Thanks very much, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.